Okay, let's get right into it. A court in Japan has done something pretty much unheard of. It ordered a massive religious organization, the Unification Church, to completely dissolve. So today, we're going to break down their side of the story, how they're fighting back against this decision, and what their game plan is from here.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? How on earth does a group with 100,000 members get told to just shut down? And what exactly is their argument against it? Well, it all kicked off with one very powerful court ruling.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at what the court actually ordered. Then, we'll dive into the church's specific counterarguments. We're also going to hear from the believers themselves, unpack the bigger ideological fight they believe they're in, and finally, look at why they're framing this as a major test for freedom in Japan.
All right, so first things first. Let's look at why the court made this call. What was the core reason for taking such a drastic step?
The court's entire reasoning really hinges on this one phrase: continuous and serious financial damages. From their perspective, the financial harm was just so widespread and had been going on for so long that the only way to stop it for good was to dissolve the organization itself. That was their bottom line.
So how did the church react? Well, they came out swinging, holding a press conference almost right away. Let's break down their main arguments against this whole thing.
The very first thing they go after is this idea of continuity. See, for a dissolution order to be legal, the harm has to be ongoing. And the church's position is simple. It's not. They claim the problem isn't a continuous one.
And what's their evidence for this? They point to this number, 0.003%. The church says that right before the assassination of former Prime Minister Abe, complaints about them made up just this tiny, tiny fraction of all consumer complaints in Japan. A number, they argue, that's nowhere near continuous harm.
Okay, their second big counterargument really takes aim at the evidence the government used. They're basically saying that the legal judgments being brought up are ancient history, just way too old to have any relevance to how the church operates today.
And this number is really at the heart of that claim, 32 years. That, according to the church, is the average age of the civil rulings the government is using as proof. They're saying, look, these are decades-old issues, and any compensation was fully paid a long, long time ago.
Now this is where it gets really serious. This is their most explosive accusation. Chairman Tanaka came out and said point blank that the government's evidence included lies and fabrications, and that even after this was pointed out in court, the judge completely ignored it. That is a very, very strong claim to make.
So, we've been deep in the legal weeds. But you have to remember, this fight isn't just happening inside a courtroom. The members themselves have started taking to the streets. So what's driving them to do that? For the believers out there demonstrating, this is about way more than legal technicalities. I mean, think about it. With all the pressure from the public, these protests are a way to show each other that they're not alone. It's about solidarity for sure, but it's also a very public way to stand up for beliefs they feel are being totally misunderstood and attacked.
So why do they feel this so personally? Well, to really get it, you have to look at the core beliefs that make this, for them, so much more than just a legal problem. To them, this is a spiritual war. It's an ideological war.
And the key to their entire worldview is a concept they call cultural communism. Now, for them, this isn't just some political theory. They see it as a real, active force trying to tear down Japan's foundations by attacking the family, attacking religion, and attacking national identity. So in their minds, fighting this dissolution order is part of a much bigger battle.
This contrast right here is central to their whole message. On one side, you have what they call familyism, the idea of cherishing your parents and loving your country. And on the other side, they place communism as its exact opposite, an ideology that, in their view, wants to destroy families and put the nation in danger. For them, this battle has been going on for decades.
And all of this brings us to the final part of their argument. Because they see this as such a huge ideological battle, they believe this court decision isn't just about them. They're framing this as a crisis point for all of Japanese society. Now, the court says it's not trying to restrict anyone's personal faith, but the church's response is, wait a minute, if you seize all our buildings and all our assets, how are we supposed to gather and pray? They're arguing that this is, in reality, a violation of their religious freedom, because it makes it impossible for them to practice their faith as a group.
So what's next? Where do they go from here?
It really looks like they're planning to fight this on 3 different fronts. Inside Japan, they'll appeal to higher courts. Around the world,
They're going to organize with their international members. And on the world stage, they plan to make their case to the international community, arguing this is a direct threat to religious freedom in Japan.
To use their own words, they don't see this as the end of a court case. They see it as the beginning of a crisis for Japan's democracy and for the fundamental right to freedom of religion itself. That is the very stark message they want everyone to hear.
And so, this whole conflict really leaves us with one massive question. Is this court order a necessary step to protect victims who have been harmed, or is it a dangerous precedent that puts a fundamental right, one that belongs to everyone, at risk? That very heavy question is now up for debate, not just in the courts, but across all of society.